Somewhere in the silent basements of a facility no one is allowed to visit, an experiment is happening now, a real experiment, funded by one of the most powerful men on the planet. Those involved were forced to sign contracts with absolute silence clauses. Some scientists abandoned the project citing unacceptable ethical implications. Others have disappeared completely. The name of this is Neuralink. But what Elon Musk is trying to do goes far beyond curing diseases. He wants to connect his mind to the machine and control the future of human consciousness. If I told you that Elon Musk is funding an experiment so dangerous, so outside the bounds of traditional science, that not even the United States government dares to admit that it exists, a secret project hidden behind locked doors involving neuroscientists, artificial intelligence, and something that can change or destroy everything we know about free will. Would you think it's a conspiracy theory? Or would you understand that we are facing the greatest transformation in the history of humanity, silent but brutally real, a secret experiment, not registered in any public document, not discussed at scientific conferences, and deliberately ignored by the mainstream media, an experience that touches the deepest codes of what makes us human, thoughts, emotions, memories, all of this being translated into zeros and ones. If successful, it could mean the next evolutionary leap for our species. But if it goes wrong, we are not just talking about neurological failures or individual damage. We are talking about the possibility of compromising, irreversibly, the very fabric of civilization. Because when someone controls the brain, controls behavior, and when you control behavior on a global scale, free will ceases to exist. The name of this is Neuralink, and at first glance, it looks like just another high-tech startup. Brain chips, cutting-edge science, revolutionary medical promises. But when you look closer, when you dig beneath the press releases and public statements, you begin to realize this is not just about technology. It's about power. It's about control. It's about redefining the boundaries of what it means to be human. Imagine a world where your thoughts are no longer private, where your decisions can be influenced before you even realize it, where what you feel can be edited like a computer file. That's what's at stake. And the truth is, maybe the world isn't ready yet to face what Elon Musk is trying to build. Elon Musk, the visionary who challenged the auto industry and won. The billionaire who looked at the sky and said, "The Earth is too small." The man who wants to colonize Mars, redesign the global financial system, and connect the human mind to the internet. For many, he is a genius. To others, a provocateur. But what almost no one realizes is that, behind the headlines and the rockets, Musk is leading one of the darkest and most controversial initiatives in the history of modern neuroscience. It's not about apps. It's not about cars. It's about something much more intimate, much more dangerous, a bold and perhaps insane attempt to merge the human brain with the machine. And the consequences of this no one can predict. In 2020, away from the public eye and the traditional scientific community, a select group of carefully chosen scientists met in a highly restricted Neuralink laboratory. There, under absolute secrecy, the first tests have begun. Pigs, they were the first to receive brain implants designed to decode neural signals in real time. What seemed impossible started to work. Heartbeats, motor impulses, even rudimentary emotions, everything being translated into data. But that was just the beginning. Soon the monkeys came, and with them, something even more disturbing. For the first time in history, a primate was able to move digital objects using only thought. The experiment left the field of medicine and entered the territory of the impossible. Now, tests are no longer on animals. They are with humans, real people, human brains being connected directly to machines. And the question no one dares to ask out loud is, how far is Musk willing to go? The official objective? Simple, noble, almost indisputable, helping people with neurological disabilities restore movement, restore speech, reconnect the body to the mind. And that, in itself, would be revolutionary. But Elon Musk was never driven just by healing. He doesn't just want to fix the human being. He wants to transform you. In several interviews, Musk made it clear, Neuralink's true plan goes far beyond medicine. What he seeks is to create a bridge between the human brain and artificial intelligence, a total symbiosis, a system where man and machine not only coexist, but they merge. According to him, it is the only way to prevent AI from destroying humanity. But here's the problem. What if, in this attempt to protect ourselves, we are opening the doors to our own obsolescence? Because once the brain is online, who guarantees that it will still be yours? What he doesn't tell you is that this advance opens the door to something profoundly dangerous. Because by transforming the human brain into a connected interface, you are not just accessing information, you are creating a direct channel into consciousness, and everything that is connected can be accessed. Anything that can be accessed can be monitored, and everything that is monitored, sooner or later, can be controlled. We're not talking about technology anymore. We are talking about existential vulnerability, to surrender the most intimate part of the human being, their thoughts, their memories, their impulses, to the domain of a network. And every network has an owner. What if you could control thoughts, not with words, not with manipulation, but literally direct, inserting an idea, like typing a sentence on an invisible keyboard? What if it were possible to erase a traumatic memory? Or worse, remove an inconvenient reminder without the person even noticing? Imagine waking up one day, knowing who you are, but feeling like something is missing, something that has been deleted from your mind, like a file dragged to the trash. Now go deeper. What if it were possible to hack consciousnesses, reprogram decisions, redirect desires, shaping behaviors as if humans were algorithms? This is not science fiction. It is the beginning of an era where free will becomes optional, and whoever has the right code will have absolute power. If this kind of information gives you the creeps, no wonder. It means you felt the weight of what's behind this story, that you realized we're not just talking about technology, but of the destiny of our species. So, before we continue, click like and subscribe to the channel, not just to support this type of content, but because what comes next will completely change the way you see the future of humanity. And you deserve to know what's hidden behind the smiles and technological stages. It all started in silence. No grand announcements, no stage performances. Just an idea, too dangerous to ignore and too advanced to understand. In 2016, Elon Musk founded Neuralink. But unlike his other companies, like Tesla and SpaceX, this was born shrouded in secrecy. Musk has assembled a group of the world's most brilliant neuroscientists, engineers, and brain implant specialists. But it wasn't an academic project. It was a mission to decipher the human brain and connect it to machines. At first, the tests were modest: computational models, brain signals from rodents, low-complexity implants. But there was an unusual rush, aggressive deadlines, endless nights in isolated laboratories, and a tension in the air as if everyone knew they were dealing with something too big. Soon, testing evolved. The pigs came. Animals were trained to walk on treadmills while their neural impulses were read in real time. The goal was to understand, predict, and perhaps even influence behavior through brain signals. And for the first time, scientists saw a system able to interpret what a brain was trying to say, not with words, but with electrical impulses. Humans. The scientific community was in shock. Some applauded, others warned, "You are crossing a line that perhaps should never be crossed." But Musk didn't stop, because for him, this wasn't just science. It was a race, a silent war against the uncontrolled advance of artificial intelligence. And in his view, the only way to save humanity is by fusing it with the machines. But the question few dared to ask was, at what cost? While the world saw him as an eccentric billionaire, Elon Musk was quietly plotting a bold move: create the most powerful team in the history of modern neuroscience. But he knew, I couldn't do it in broad daylight. Musk started with an unconventional strategy. Instead of posting open positions, he quietly scoured elite universities, scientific conferences, newly published studies, and obscure academic articles, in search of minds that not only understood the brain, but who thought outside the box. And when I found someone promising, did not send an email. I sent a confidential invitation signed with 3 words: "Do you want to change the world?" Meetings were scheduled in confidential locations. Conversations took place under confidentiality agreements. And what was presented at these meetings, it wasn't a job. It was a historic challenge. Decipher the human brain and create a direct interface with the machine. Some refused. They said it was impossible. Others became obsessed with the idea. These were the chosen ones. Scientists from Harvard, Stanford, MIT, experts in neuroengineering, brain-computer interface, nanotechnology, and machine learning. Musk didn't just want the smartest. He wanted the boldest ones. People willing to break with traditional ethics, redefining the limits of science, and to be part of something the world wasn't ready to accept yet. While the world was distracted by the launch of electric cars and reusable rockets, something much quieter and infinitely more disturbing was beginning. In a hidden Neuralink laboratory, protected by strict confidentiality clauses, the first real brain-machine interface experiments were initiated. The first tests did not involve humans, not even monkeys. They started with rats. Rats whose brains were surgically implanted, with wires thinner than a hair. Tiny sensors, connected to an external computer, began to pick up the electric flow of primitive thoughts. And then, something happened. For the first time, scientists have been able to predict an animal's movement before it makes it. It was as if the mental code was beginning to be deciphered. But that was just the beginning. Soon, implants became more advanced. The attempts were no longer just passive. They became active, not just reading signs, but also send commands back to the brain. An electrical impulse, a slight change in behavior, an induced movement. Few had access to the actual data from these tests, but leaked reports anonymously indicated that Neuralink had crossed a line. Previously thought to exist only in science fiction, it was the first time that the animal brain was networked, connected, with influence. What if it worked with mice? Would soon work with something much closer to us. As Neuralink's experiments progressed in secrecy, the buzz among experts began to grow. Researchers from renowned universities, veteran neurosurgeons, bioethicists who have been studying the limits of brain intervention for decades began to sound the alarm, because it wasn't just about new technology. It was something that touched the heart of the human being, in mind, the identity, the conscience, in articles published discreetly in academic journals. At scientific conferences where Musk's name was whispered with discomfort, the same question echoed: are we going to fast? For some, the answer was clear: yes. They feared that the pursuit of spectacular results was running over the most basic ethical care, that animal testing was being conducted in a rush and without external oversight, that data was being retained, risks were minimized, and the debate silenced. But there was an even deeper fear, more uncomfortable, harder to admit. What if it works? What if Elon Musk really manages to merge man and machine? What happens to the concept of freedom, privacy, of individual autonomy? Some said, that's evolution. Others responded, that's the end of free will. And in this clash of visions, a new kind of war was forming, not with weapons, but with ideas. Not between nations, but between visions of the future. And so far, Musk is winning. The year was 2021, and what once seemed like science fiction became reality in front of cameras around the world. Neuralink released a video that, at first glance, looked like just another technology demonstration. But whoever watched carefully realized, we were crossing an invisible border. On the screen, a monkey named Pager, sitting in front of a screen, playing Pong, that classic game from the 70s, using only the mind. No controls, no buttons, no touch. The sensors implanted in his brain were reading his neural activity in real time, interpreting their intentions, and transforming thoughts into digital commands. He thought, and the game responded. The demonstration was sold as a victory for science. But behind the scenes, another story was beginning to emerge. Internal reports leaked, and with them, a series of disturbing complaints, failures in the surgical process, animal suffering, tests with dangerously high margins of error. Some scientists at Neuralink itself have resigned. Others disappeared behind the scenes without public explanation. The controversy intensified. What Neuralink was showing the public was just the palatable part of the story. But what else were they testing there, away from the cameras? And if a monkey can play with its mind, what prevents a human being from being programmed to obey? It was a simple video, a few minutes, no special effects, no soundtrack, a monkey, a screen, a game, and an event that, quietly, marked one of the strangest and scariest moments in the history of technology. His name was Pager, a laboratory monkey trained to interact with a digital interface, first with a joystick, then with the eyes, and finally with the brain. The Neuralink chip was implanted in his skull weeks earlier. During this time, the algorithms began to learn the animal's neural patterns. Every movement, every intention to act, every electrical impulse captured and translated into data. So, the time has come for the final test. The joystick has been removed, and Pager kept playing, moving the Pong game bar with nothing but your mental intent. Thought became movement. Brain turned into remote control, and the impossible was recorded on video. Millions watched. Some were amazed, others restless, because if a monkey can control a game with its brain, how long will it be until a human controls a drone or a gun? And most importantly, if we can read minds, how long will we resist the temptation to rewrite them? Not all was silence in the halls of Neuralink. Between the futuristic laboratories, the grand promises, and the brilliant press releases, voices began to rise, voices from within, scientists who were there from the beginning, researchers who believed in the potential to heal, transform, and evolve. But little by little, they began to realize that something was not right. One of them, under anonymity, declared, the pressure for results was insane. They wanted to do in months what would have taken decades. Ethics only if it didn't mess up the deadlines. Another, in a confidential interview, was more direct. I saw things that kept me up at night, not because they were futuristic, but because they were dangerously irresponsible. We were tapping into areas of the brain that affect identity, emotion, and will, and no one seemed willing to stop. Some reported experiments conducted without external review. Others, repeated procedures in animals with a high level of suffering. One of them wrote in his diary, leaked months later, the problem isn't the chip, it's the ego of those who want to dominate it before understanding it. Several of these professionals left the company silently. Some changed areas. Others have disappeared from the academic scene altogether. But what scares me most is that none of them were prosecuted. None of them had their names exposed. None suffered public retaliation. Because maybe Neuralink prefers silence to controversy. And who knows too much learn quickly that some doors, once opened, can never be closed. For years, what happened inside Neuralink remained buried under layers of secrecy. The company strictly controlled what was released. He showed the world only what seemed innovative, clean, and bright. But then the leaks started. First, small ones, excerpts from internal emails, messages exchanged between engineers warning of unforeseen neurological risks, tense discussions about failures in equipment sterilization. Then, something bigger, a series of internal documents sent anonymously to journalists and bioethics groups, exposed a reality that contradicted everything Musk had been promising the public. Among the files were technical reports on experiments that went wrong, incorrectly implanted chips, irreversible brain damage in test animals, protocols ignored to speed up results. One of the most shocking reports described a critical flaw in a chip model. When activated, it began to emit chaotic impulses, triggering serial convulsions in a primate. The animal had to be euthanized immediately. The experiment was archived, but not reported. Another document indicated that, during a cycle of tests, more than 85% of the animals presented unexpected side effects, from severe behavioral changes to total loss of motor coordination, and perhaps most alarming of all, a memo signed by a senior executive warned that pressure for results was causing teams to take risks that would endanger human health if the trials proceeded to the next phase. But even in the face of these warnings, the tests continued, because for Musk and his vision of the future, failure is just an obstacle in the path of revolution. While the audience watched futuristic presentations and rehearsed videos, behind the scenes, the truth was beginning to leak out. Internal Neuralink documents obtained by investigative journalists and former employees revealed a much darker picture than anyone could have imagined. Confidential. Reports showed tests with critical failures, implants that caused brain inflammation, devices that stopped working in the middle of an experiment, and cases of animals that suffered irreversible neurological damage. And these were not isolated incidents, they were patterns. In one of the most shocking leaks, it was discovered that Musk's rush to reveal the results to the public was jeopardizing the integrity of the tests. There were messages exchanged between executives and scientists that said, "Ignore protocol. We need something demonstrable for the next event. Musk wants visual proof. Make it work, even if it's not 100% stable." These words did not come from enemies. They came from inside, from people who struggled between loyalty to the project and the weight of one's own conscience. The complaints reached the U.S. Department of Agriculture, who launched an investigation into possible ethical violations in the treatment of animals. But the most alarming thing was not what the documents showed. That was what was still hidden. If this happened to animals, what is being omitted now that testing has reached humans? After the pigs, after the monkeys, the next step was inevitable. In January 2024, Neuralink announced that it had successfully implanted its brain chip into a human, a volunteer, willing to be the first to cross the line between the biological and the digital. The world watched in silence. The news seemed like something out of a science fiction episode. The patient, according to the company, was fine. "I could move the cursor on the screen using only my mind. A historic feat, a revolution for people with paralysis or movement disorders." But while the headlines celebrated, experts questioned, who supervises these tests? Who audits the data? What risks were taken and which were hidden? The truth is that Neuralink is not a hospital, it's not a university. It is a private company, run by a billionaire with almost messianic ambitions. And now, this company has direct access to human brains. We are no longer talking about healing. We are talking about modifying. With this chip, it is not only possible to read neural signals, it is possible to send stimuli, regulate emotions, inhibit impulses, change behaviors. The volunteer connected to the machine, but no one knows what else is being transmitted behind the data. And what happens when the next generation of these implants is no longer optional? He wasn't famous, he was not a scientist, he wasn't a celebrity, he was just an ordinary man with a dream and a need to move again. In January 2024, Neuralink announced that he had become the first human in history to receive a brain chip from the company, an invisible implant installed directly in the motor cortex, as small as a coin, but capable of intercepting, processing, and transmitting neural signals in real time. The results, according to Musk, were encouraging. The volunteer was able to control the computer cursor with his mind. He made simple movements with simple thoughts. But what seemed like a miracle also raised a number of disturbing questions. Did the volunteer sign consent? Did you understand all the risks? Did you have access to outside doctors? Or were you only monitored by Neuralink itself? And more, what exactly was being recorded there? Because every thought, every impulse, every hesitation could be being stored, analyzed, and cataloged. Experts warned, this technology can evolve very quickly. Today, it is used to move the cursor. Tomorrow, you will be able to write entire sentences with your thoughts. And the day after, tomorrow, who can guarantee that it will not be possible to implement ideas and not just capture them? From that moment on, a new type of human came into existence, the connected human, part brain, part code. But nobody knows if he is still completely free. At first glance, Neuralink's chip looks like a miracle for people with paralysis, movement disorders, or degenerative diseases. The promise is real. Recover movements, restore speech, reconnect mind and body. Imagine someone who can no longer move their arms, using only thought to control a wheelchair, or someone who has lost their voice, communicating in seconds with sentences generated directly by the brain. It's impossible not to be moved by this possibility. But what if that same chip, which can give freedom to a patient, can also be used to interfere with who a person is? Because the brain doesn't just store movements, he keeps emotions, fears, traumas, desires, Identity. What if it were possible to adjust dopamine levels to control mood? What if a command could silence unwanted thoughts or stimulate specific behavioral reactions? And more. Who decides what should be changed? The patient himself or the system that reads your signals? Today, we talk about healing, but tomorrow we may be talking about emotional standardization in individuals calibrated not to suffer, not to resist, not to question. The technology that promises to free may be silently building an invisible prison with grids made of algorithms and control. Disguised as care, every great revolution in human history has required courage, but some require something even rarer, awareness of one's own limits. Science advances, technology doesn't wait, and Neuralink's chip pushes us into a new era in which the boundary between what is human and what is machine begins to blur. But the question no one wants to answer is simple and brutal. How far should we go? Is it ethical to alter someone's mind, even with consent? Who guarantees that this consent was given freely when the chip itself can alter perceptions and desires? What if a private company could one day decide which thoughts were acceptable? What behaviors are efficient? What memories deserve to be erased? Today, it is a medical breakthrough. Tomorrow, it could be a control mechanism, emotional re-education programs, personality updates, replacement of human traits with optimized algorithms. We are no longer just discussing technology. We are discussing the soul. And at that point, the question is no longer how, is it should we? When the power to shape the human brain is in private hands, driven by global ambitions, ethics ceases to be a choice, and it becomes a line of defense. But maybe we have already crossed that line. As the world applauds the promises of healing, mobility, and overcoming, there's a side to the Neuralink project that Elon Musk never talks about in his public interviews. A future that doesn't appear in slideshows, not even in carefully rehearsed demonstrations. But little by little, it is being built. A future where everything we think, literally everything, can be recorded, analyzed, and interpreted. A future where inner silence ceases to exist, where even the most intimate thoughts can be read by a machine. Now imagine this on a network, millions of minds connected, real-time data exchange, mental profiles being drawn with surgical precision, individual decisions influenced by subtly implanted suggestions, and more. An AI with direct access to what you feel, to what you desire, to what you fear. This is no longer a science fiction scenario. It is the draft of a new mental order, where free will is a comfortable illusion, and the control is imperceptible. Some are already calling this the birth of Homo technius, a new kind of human being, connected, optimized, traceable. Elon Musk says this merger is necessary to prevent us from being overtaken by artificial intelligence. But what if, in trying to protect ourselves, is he creating the ultimate mechanism of domination? Because once your mind is online, it can be monitored, and everything that is monitored can be manipulated. This is the future he doesn't reveal, because maybe not even he knows where this will end. Or worse, maybe you know exactly where you're going. For decades, whoever controlled the information controlled the world. Governments, large corporations, social networks, everyone fought to influence what you saw, read, believed. But that was before. Because now, with Neuralink technology, information no longer needs to pass through screens, newspapers, or external algorithms. It can be injected directly into your mind. No filters, no questions asked, no time to react. And if before the control was over what you consumed, now control can be over what you think. Imagine a mental notification, an induced feeling, a planted idea. You wake up with a formed opinion, but doesn't know where it came from. You feel an urgency, a desire, a conviction, and believes that she is his, but it isn't. This is the power of total information control. He doesn't need to convince you. He just programs you. In a world connected directly to the brain, traditional advertising becomes obsolete because the new media is the mind and the new product is you. Imagine making a decision and not knowing if it was really yours. With the integration between the human brain and artificial intelligence, this possibility is no longer fiction and becomes a real ethical dilemma. Neuralink's proposal is not just to record thoughts. It is to allow the human brain to communicate with intelligent systems. AI is capable of processing billions of data per second. Systems that, theoretically, can help you make better decisions. Best according to whom? If you are about to make an important choice, change jobs, break up a relationship, vote for someone, and an AI integrated into your brain suggests an option based on your mental data. Is this still your decision? Or are you just obeying an invisible calculation? Think about it. In a world where AI already dictates what you watch, buy and enjoy, what happens when she starts dictating who you should be? This is the real danger of integration, when the machine stops being a tool and becomes a silent advisor you cannot ignore. Because if she's inside your mind, you will not hear a voice. You will feel as if it were your own will. And at that moment, free will dies without a trace. Throughout history, few names have marked the evolution of humanity. From stone to fire, from steam to electricity, from the internet to connected consciousness. But now, a new name is being etched into this timeline. Not as an inventor, not as a businessman, but as an architect of a new species, Elon Musk. With Neuralink, Musk isn't just creating technology. He is writing the next chapter of human evolution. No longer Homo sapiens, but something beyond. Something hybrid. Something that mixes flesh and code. O Homo technicus, a being with the ability to access unlimited knowledge with thought, of controlling machines with brain impulses. Expand your cognition through integrated artificial intelligence. But this advancement comes at a price, because everything that is improved can be programmed, everything that is connected can be tracked, and everything that depends on technology can be turned off. Musk may be creating a new era, or he could be building the perfect prison where the shackles are not visible because they are installed inside the mind. And the question the world needs to ask is not whether this will happen, but when, and who will be in control when it happens. It's not just a chip. It's not just a device on your skull, a medical breakthrough, or another invention of an eccentric billionaire. This is the next phase of human evolution, a turning point where we stop being just flesh and thought, and we begin to merge with the machines we create. An irreversible merger, a path of no return. But this leap, this profound transformation, should not be decided in secret laboratories, not even by shareholders, not by a single man, however visionary he may be. Because we are talking about the future of the human mind, of freedom, of identity, and the question that needs to echo, now more than ever, is, who should decide the limits of this? The engineers, the governments, the companies, or you? Elon Musk isn't just innovating, he is redefining the rules of existence. By touching the human brain, by integrating minds into the machine, he is not just opening doors to the future, he is recreating the concept of humanity. But when a man has in his hands the ability to alter thoughts, access emotions, and redesign consciousness, he's not just building technology anymore. He is playing God and the world with its fragile systems, its unstable values, and their thirst for innovation at any cost. Maybe you're not ready for this yet. Perhaps no one is. If this video made you see something that few have the courage to talk about, if it made you question, reflect, or even feel that discomfort that only the truth causes, so you are part of a minority that does not accept things as they are, and who has the courage to look beyond appearances. So it doesn't stop here. Watch the next video in the playlist now. In it, you will discover the hidden side of another genius, someone who is also shaping the future of humanity, but in an even quieter way. And if you thought Elon Musk was playing with boundaries, what comes next will show you that the game has been going on for a long time. Press play. You're already in.